Hi guys, thank you so much for coming out today. We're really happy to and excited to launch this new project called KSEA Visual Radio. I'm your host, Sean Kim, and we have 4 exciting guest speakers today. First episode, we're going to talk about data science and consultants. There are a lot of myths and some things that we don't know about. So first of all, we're going to start with brief introduction for each speaker. If you don't mind, would you mind please introduce yourself?
Sounds good. Maybe I'll start and then maybe I'll go and then Ben, Israel, Amy.
Sure.
So I'll start. My name is John Lee. I'm a managing director at KPMG. My main 2 responsibilities is one is I'm leading the AI platform for KPMG, which focuses on a lot of unstructured data processing around documents and invoices, tax forms. And then my other one is around innovation. So how do we take big ideas and promising new technologies and then turn them into services that we deploy at KPMG.
Oh, great.
Israel, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Hunmin Jung. I go by Israel with close friends and family, and that's what KSEA is to me. I guess everyone at KSEA probably knows me as the Boeing engineer, which I've been at Boeing for 12 years, 10 as an engineer, and the last 2 doing some business development and marketing. Very, very recently, I started my own consulting gig. So I have an LLC. I'm looking for office space in the Atlanta area, and I have my first client, which is an aerospace supplier. So just starting out in this area, but learning myself too. But really open to sharing everything I'm learning as I'm going. So that's it for me.
That's exciting. Ben?
Sure. Hi, I'm Benjamin Lee. I'm in New York City, and I'm a senior research associate in radiology at the Dalio Institute for Cardiovascular Imaging at Weill Cornell Medicine. My background's in electrical engineering. I did image processing, and then afterwards I was in industry for more than 10 years for a medical imaging software company, writing algorithms for related to heart disease and detection of it. About 2.5 years ago, I came to New York and Cornell to apply some of this machine learning and deep learning to the field of medical imaging. So I think what I can share is my experiences in academic research and image classification, and also just share the process of learning data science.
Sounds great. Last but not the least, Amy.
Hi everyone. My name is Amy Han. I'm based in Winter Wonderland, Chicago, Illinois, and I'm currently a data scientist at Discover Financial Services for their anti-money laundering, modeling, and analytics team. And prior joining Discover, I was in industry for about 6 years with IBM for their multi-cloud management platform, and then catastrophe modeling and analytics for Allstate, and then public safety team and underwriters laboratory. And so my recent work more focuses on the natural language processing, NLP, and text mining. And I'm also educator in passion. I was used to be lecturer for university for past 4 years. And I'm heavy mathematician, so I have my master's and bachelor's in maths. So I'm such an honor to be here. And then I'm also co-chair along with our great chair, Ben, for UKC Data Science Workshop for this year.
That was such a good plug. So today we're gonna talk about like few questions to go over. I think it's very exciting that you guys are coming from different backgrounds. Hopefully we can get some good insights of your experiences. After we talk a few questions, we're gonna also listen to a few people's their own stories. So be ready for that. So first question is, there is no clear path of becoming a consultant or data scientist. Could you tell us how you became one, and how would you do differently if you could?
So I really, I don't know if I took the traditional path, probably not. So I was an engineer for 10 years. And after 10 years, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I went back to school, did a part-time MBA, and did some work in business development and marketing. And earlier this year, I actually left Boeing, where I've been for 12 years, just to be a stay-home dad, really. I had no plans of being a consultant or anything like that. But this supplier kept approaching me and kept wanting to hire me. And I didn't want to join a small aerospace supplier, to be honest. So I kept saying no. But then I saw an opportunity where I could be a consultant, basically a contractor, but an opportunity to set up my own thing and do things on my terms. And I did that, and I proposed it, and it was agreed upon. So basically, I am sort of a right-hand man for the executives of this small company. And I noticed that I actually could do this role. A lot of it is learning what kind of fleets and different products our customers have, analyzing what kind of spare parts and maintenance programs they need, and figuring out different products and services we can offer them. And I realized I could do that because with my experience at Boeing, and right now I'm putting all that into good use. So there's a lot more because I have to file in a lot of administrative things because it's my own LLC now, and I'm not part of a big mega company that I was before, so it's a little different. But a good experience nonetheless. I'm not
so you didn't know that you're becoming a consultant until like now, I guess.
It was, it started in September, really. I guess I did some work in August, but I
guess the experience from Boeing really helped to become.
Yes, it was a good segue for my first client, but I'm hoping that after this or in parallel, I could broaden out a little bit and look into other areas where I could apply this and work as a consultant. And I have to learn about different industries to be able to do that. So so looking forward to that, actually, to the next few clients and the next few steps.
Okay. How about you, John? I know that your background is not also from consultant background first, right? You went to school for...
So I work for a large consulting company, and my background before that was in engineering, but I was interested in consulting just because I wanted to try to do a change, and I wanted to work in a very dynamic environment. So I joined kind of like a large professional services consulting firm. I started off as a data scientist. So when I started, I was actually doing more around building models for social media analytics. And I was doing a little bit of consulting on the side, but most of the client handling and most of the scoping was usually done by others. But it was my job to do a lot of solution architecture. So hearing a client problem that they're having and try to figure out how to use algorithms, natural language processing, and machine learning. And then over time, I would have to learn the consulting skills to be able to lead projects. So and now, I'm at a level where I could actually, own an engagement. So the projects that we have in consulting are called engagements. And so over time, I've had to learn everything about, creating invoices and statements of work, working with clients, doing kickoffs. But it was a nice progression for me because the first couple of years I was mostly being as a data scientist, and then over time I had to gradually take on responsibilities to be able to do consulting.
Interesting.
I'm not a consultant, so.
You can talk about your data science.
Oh, just my path? Sure, I guess my background is image processing and computer vision, and I had done that for a while. And the machine learning was coming about. I think the first time I heard about data science and machine learning was like there was I talk about this McKinsey white paper in 2011. And I was like, oh, what is this? And I remember reading that brochure, and it was all about like data engineering and all that and storing data. And then right at the back was this one little short site about machine learning. So I think in the early days, it was a lot about getting the data processed and everything. And then a little bit later on, I think machine learning was picking up. I took a Coursera course, but I still didn't know much. But because of my background in traditional computer vision, the group here at Cornell, I was able to get a job because at the moment, they had a lot of data scientists who came out, but they didn't have like domain expertise in other areas like medical imaging. Mm-hmm. So I had no experience in machine learning practically, but they wanted someone with software development experience and also traditional computer vision. So I think the deal was that I would bring that to the table, but then I would also learn the data science and machine learning. So that kind of worked out well. And then, I think the difficulty was that some of these areas, the talent or someone who has expertise in this area there's such high demand for it. It's hard to find mentorship for someone who really knows a lot of the machine learning. So actually the group I went into, they were like dying to get a postdoc or a professor to kind of help them along. But while they were waiting, they just kind of learned on their own. And so then I was able to learn from them. So, since it's all kind of very new, I think learning from peers and at some point just, working on learning from experiences is sort of what's happened in the past few years for my group and myself.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of people's question when I was preparing for this today. Like people had questions of like where to learn from, like what's the pathway, because there's no like prominent pathway for this. So I think that was a really good point. Amy, do you want to talk about your path?
Yeah, so honestly, I have a math background. So I originally didn't know what to do with math degree, honestly. And then that's why I went to grad school for applied mathematics study. So from my graduate study, I was able to learn some coding and programming, and as well as some statistical background and data science part, which Ben just mentioned that at that time that data science was introduced, and then there was a new era for data science. So I was in the right timing, I guess, and then I started as a analyst, and then start learning from different industry to industry, and became a data scientist after that. So I think this field is very new, and then continue to evolving, and then I think definitely there's a not solid like picture yet, but I think it was difficult at the beginning because I didn't have any mentor either. So yeah.
Sounds like you guys are all coming from different backgrounds and didn't know that you are going to end up in this area right now, that where you are.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Okay. So this question is for the data scientist. So what's the difference between a data scientist and a machine learning engineer? Like responsibilities and experience and degree required and career trajectory. Does anyone want to answer this question?
It's a hard one, Sean.
It is a hard one.
So can I go?
Sure.
So, so as a data scientist, I believe it's just a personal opinion, but I think machine learning engineer is a data scientist plus software engineer, from my opinion, because I think since this field is such a new, every company define data scientists differently. But most of my cases I've seen so far, usually data scientists build machine learning models, and then whenever using machine learning algorithm and deep learning algorithm, and then whenever it has to get productized, I think machine learning engineer comes in, and then they help out to productize and make the model in production. So I think having like software engineering and computer science background would be very helpful for the machine learning engineer. And then yeah, that's my view of machine learning engineer.
Okay.
How different to the data scientist?
What do you think about it, Ben?
Yeah, I agree. The ML engineer is the person who implements in software, and maybe the data scientists or data analysts can also maybe be on the sorts of the business end, and maybe the other guys can expand upon that. I did think that sometimes when I've seen job postings, there's also like a data engineer, and that's, I would say, is really on the practical end too, but more about data storage, data processing, loading, and maybe not so much the model building. But I guess the only other thing I think of is in terms of like degree or experience, I've had some of my colleagues leave the lab, and some require a PhD, and I think because there's again a shortage of people with experience in machine learning. I've had a colleague who got a master's and was able to become a lead, for a company.
So do you think PhD is necessary for data science, or like, because like each company requires different requirements, and still is kind of new to the field. What do you think the bare minimum requirements for data science?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say when I see job postings, it's always preferred for a PhD, and I think they're looking for that. Outside of just data science, generally, when you have a PhD, you have an experience of having led a project. So you have the experience of being independent, and I think that's what they're looking for. But this field is so new. Mm-hmm. No one has formally gone through a machine learning or data science degree. I think they're starting to, their master's programs and all that. So I think a lot of the PhDs have sort of learned this as a tool to go along with whatever major research they're doing. But I think there's a preference for it.
I see. Thank you. So this question is for consultants. For consultants' role is very different from one firm to another, even one department to another. What is your role in your team, and how does your daily work look like? So I think the consultant definition is not really rigid for many people. Like, if you don't mind, how's your work like, that'd be great. Because each company also has a different roles of consultants too.
Yeah, I mean, consulting is like the broadest thing. Like anybody who is not like an employee is basically a consultant. And like in my firm, we have the tax consultants and the audit consultants. And then within the consulting division, we have the technology consultants, we have the risk consultants, we have like the industry specific ones, financial services folks, we have folks that work on M&A and deals, and people that work on managed services. So it's quite a big landscape. I like to say it's like high school, where you have all the different groups, and they all have very different personalities. And the personalities generally reflect the clients they serve. So the ones that focus on investment banking, usually reflect like investment banking type lifestyles. In my case, I work mostly with folks in banking, and then I also work a lot with people in procurement and like the back office groups. Mm-hmm. And in our case, a lot of it is working with large regulatory change problems. So, for example, our group did a lot of work around the LIBOR transition. There's an interest rate that's being deprecated next year, and a lot of contracts need to be rewritten to write mm-hmm. the interest rate out of it. And so, what our team does is gets a big dump of data from the client. We have to then reconcile which documents are which is the main contract, which one's the addendum, which one's the master services agreements, and build document trees. And next, we need to mine the document. So we need to OCR, do image correction, and then use machine learning and natural language processing to help mine content out of the documents.
Mm.
And then afterwards, we load it into an application to show it to clients. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff. And then the consulting side of it is to work with clients to understand what the business requirements is, how they define things. So each client, each company will define things differently. And so we have to understand, well, how does your client, how do you define things within your company?
That sounds like learning a whole different business every single time when you have a different client.
Yeah, so that's the good thing about consulting is Israel mentioned, he needs to learn a lot of industries. And if you want to be successful as a consultant, they definitely don't want to hire somebody that's going to learn on their time. So you need to come in with some industry expertise and domain expertise and be able to ramp up very quickly. So you need to understand how the client works and how to be effective very quickly.
Very interesting. Izzy, do you have any inputs on this? How's your daily life as a consultant?
Yeah, I think my experience is a little bit different than John's, probably a lot easier too. So I work in 4 main areas. I do some business development, developing new products and services for maintaining basically fleets. That involves a little bit of strategy and later on a little bit of marketing and sales too. And lastly, using some of my previous networks to kind of connect people and bring people together. I think that's really the 4 main areas where I spend my day. And because I'm a one-man show, I also have to do a lot of admin and finance in the back. Yeah, to keep the book straight and things like that. But right now it's not a whole lot because just getting started. So hasn't been super busy, and as you know, travel right now is pretty limited. But just preparing, for when that picks up and when things could get a little busier. And like John brought up again, I want to kind of expand too. So in my free time, trying to just learn what else is out there, and what other areas I can get into. So,
well, sounds like a continual learning every time when you have to consult on something new.
Yes, for sure.
Do you like it? I mean, it's a new role that you're having.
Yeah, right now I'm enjoying it. I'm in my comfort zone with right now, but who knows when I get a little bit outside of that. I think I'll enjoy it, but I'll find out when that time comes.
Right. I think learning is always fun. Okay. So this question is for data scientists again. So how do you envision the future of the data science and the role of data science? It's kind of hard to just imagine what it's like to be in the future, but I think the role will be even expanding than right now. Does anyone wants to answer for this?
I could take a stab at it, and I'd love to hear John's perspective because he's probably had the most experience among all of us. But I guess the thing is, what I see in medical imaging, there's a lot of AI that's applied to diagnose disease, and sometimes the radiologists or doctors can be a little bit fearful that it may replace their job. But I think they always talk when I go to these trade shows or conferences that it's here to stay. It's not going away. It's a huge force. So they sort of have to work with it. So as a one tidbit, when you're publishing, it's sometimes it's better to say it's there to assist the doctor, not to replace the doctor. But it's going to be applied in most every area. And then Andrew Ng from his course, he's always compared it to the new electricity, the machine learning and AI. But I would just say in terms of different areas of data science, I think some of the big unsolved areas is, right now with machine learning, there's everything mostly is done using supervised learning, and there's a lot of data labeling. And so that's really expensive. Even Google, when they have millions of dollars, they you would think that they can afford all these super fast computers. And I think there was another research group that came up with some system to try to automate like labeling of data so you can train it. And it turns out that even Google wants to still save money. And so, you know, I think the trend will go toward trying to figure out how to do unsupervised learning or some sort of semi or self supervised type learning. So just to get the cost of training models a little bit cheaper. And I think there are recent articles about even universities who have a lot of funding are able to do more research, and I think they call it like the data divide or the AI divide. But anyway, and then I think the other big thing that's sort of unsolved is just having explainability in machine learning. I think it's been thought of as like a black box, and so just being able to explain it, especially again in medical imaging, when you're making medical decisions, you have to be able to explain why it's a that is also another big area that needs to be solved.
Sorry, I think there was a line issue when you were saying the last sentence. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I think the other thing is explainability and interpretability in machine learning is going to be another area of research that needs to be developed for it to be actually, you know, practically implemented and trusted.
Okay, sounds good. Does anyone wants to talk about the future data scientist role?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Ben mentioned. So I think future will be all about AI, artificial intelligence, and then maybe there will be roles like AI engineer or AI scientist in the future who could help handle the AI, because I believe there's always machine errors somehow. So that would be the role for the future. And I would like to also hear John's perspective too.
John, I think you're muted.
Thanks for asking. As you're answering, I was hoping you wouldn't call on me. Usually I do a ton of recruiting. So I've hired, you know, hundreds of people in our team over the past years, but I haven't done a lot of recruiting over the last year. And the reason why I mention that is usually through recruiting, I get a very good understanding of the landscape and how it's changing. But I do agree. So AI is becoming a big thing. But I also see that AI is generally embedded in applications. So it's a little different from data science, where the focus is on insight or building models, and AI is focused on deployment and end applications in, say, HR or finance, or building, say, for example, intelligent agents, or building you know, real-time systems that do scoring. I also see that nowadays when we hire people out of college, they usually have like a basic AI toolkit. So people who come out with computer science degrees also have taken 2 or 3 classes in machine learning and AI, and then they've also done you know, good use cases. And also people with statistics degrees usually come up with machine learning and practicum. So I also see the tide is rising. You know, there's a lot of skill sets that are much more available than there used to be. And I also see that there's these fantastic improvements, like in natural language processing, for example. 3 years ago, there wasn't an idea that we would be able to do the things we're doing now. For example, there's something called GPT-3 that was published out of OpenAI, and it's able to write better than I can. So it writes text that reads well, well formatted, perfect grammar. And the only thing it can't do is have opinions, right? But you know, maybe in 5 or 10 years, it can start to have opinions. So I think it's a really interesting time in AI and data science right now. Technology is maturing, neural networks are starting to mature, and great applications are coming out. There's huge ROI that's starting to come out with AI. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what the next 5 years are going to be, other than that it's just going to keep accelerating.
Hmm. Anyone else want to add on to that? Or I thought that was very exciting because I'm working at healthcare, and like it sounds like we can also apply that a lot for like scribing from doctor's notes without making errors, or even like filling medicines too, because it takes a lot of manpower to do it. So I think those will be very helpful in the future.
And I would just say, I think it's getting a little bit more accessible. There's like, auto ML where a lot of the modeling is sort of automated, so you may not need the high expertise. So I guess in my group, there are physicians or doctors who don't know how to program, but they can still apply ML because there's software now with a graphical user interface where you can actually read in data in Excel format and do some processing. So it's very basic and all that, but just the way like we don't write HTML, in a text editor anymore. We have tools to do all the graphics. I think ML may go in that direction, but you'll still need data scientists and machine learning people to kind of, interpret that and guide it and everything.
Thank you. So this is the last question. How would you have done differently if you knew that where you're going to be today? Would you take a different route? Like, what would you do differently if you want to?
I can go first.
Okay.
Because I'm heavy mathematician. I have a heavy math background. If I could go back to in the past, I think I will go study computer science, and math together. So that could be helpful for the role who I am today. So that's something that I have in mind. But
so did you have to learn computer science like outside of your work right now in order to get adopted for what you're doing?
No, not right now. But because I'm not productizing anything, I'm just building model and doing some natural language processing, text mining work. But I think for the future trend, I think it will be helpful to learn computer science. That's how I see it.
I see. Interesting.
Kind of curious to know what Israel thinks. Like,
Yeah, I'm curious of him too.
Oh, I mean, probably should have joined Amazon 12 years ago and now be retired. But yeah, I mean, I had a childhood dream, and that was to build airplanes, and I got to do that. I'm very proud of the products I've worked on and stuff. But looking back, I probably didn't need to spend a full 10 years in engineering. Could have definitely, like Amy said, maybe spent some time learning computer science and data science. Maybe I probably wouldn't have understood anything about machine learning, but at least getting some kind of understanding in that area, or just kind of had some little bit of different work, or got into it a little bit earlier. Maybe I didn't wait a full 10 years before, switching to different roles. But I mean, I'm pretty happy where I am, and excited about what's ahead. So, but yeah, that's all I can think of. But yeah, I mean, during those 10 years, I also got to spend a lot of time in KSEA and meeting a lot of folks in KSEA, and I really enjoyed that too, and still involved with KSEA. So, so yeah, I think that's the only thing I can think of.
Thank you.
I guess as a practical thing, I wish I learned Python earlier, since that just dominates everything in data science. My roommate in grad school, like, a long time ago, he started learning Python, and he was saying, oh, it's great and it's better than Perl and everything. And I ended up learning MATLAB, which is actually, it's quite similar to Python, which makes it even more difficult to learn Python because I'm used to doing things the MATLAB way. So I'm like constantly Google searching on Stack Exchange and all that stuff. So I guess that's a practical thing. other things is, I guess, as you're learning data science and machine learning, probably reaching out to people if you have problems. Like as a very practical thing, like I was going through the whole modeling and I was overfitting, and I had this problem for a very long time, and it just recently was able to have this model not overfit, and that was because actually we're for this workshop that's coming up, I reached out to a KSEA friend to ask him to be an organizer, and then I knew he was doing data science stuff, so I just chatted with him and said, "Hey, how's your project going?" He's like, "Oh, I have a problem with like unbalanced data," and I said, "Oh, I'm having a problem with overfitting." He's like, "Oh, have you tried spatial dropout or whatever?" And then only because my coworker mentioned that, he mentioned all these things. Every time there was a new thing that came out, he would tell me, but it was just so much to pick and choose. But when this person that I was talking to said it, I was like, oh, there are two people that told me the same thing. So I tried it and it worked. Nice. So I probably should have reached out and asked for help, earlier on.
That's good. John, do you have anything to add as a consultant? Like, would you do something differently if you were gonna become a consultant at the end?
No, I don't think so. I think I've had a pretty exciting life. I think my undergraduate degrees were in sciences, and then like I also spent a lot of time studying humanities, and then I worked in missile defense out of college, and in graduate school I worked in semiconductors and optimization, and out of graduate school I worked in natural language processing, and then I started building AI platforms, and then now I work in innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's not, there isn't any one thing I do, and it seems like my role evolves, so it's hard to say that I would have done anything differently. Mm-hmm. Probably the only thing, like if I were to say do something differently, is just throughout the whole experience try to just stay more engaged with people. I think sometimes I've put my head down to try to get a lot of things done, and that's paid off in some ways, but in some ways making sure that as you are going through the journey to make sure that you stay engaged with the people around you, and you stay engaged with what you're doing.
Right, just like what Ben did for his answer. Like if you ask around, maybe you'll get the answer faster too, right? Who knows, like unexpectedly. Yeah. So there are like 2 stories that we have received for you guys to listen to, and just think it as your own story, like and what would you do at this situation, because they also like ask for your opinions, and hopefully it'll be entertaining. So I'll let you guys listen to it.
Hi, I'm currently working as a senior data scientist at Discover, and I've been working as a data scientist for about 3 years now. And around last year, I think I realized I want to transition my career into a machine learning engineer. And the only step that I have really taken since then was to enroll myself in master's in computer science with a specialization in machine learning at Georgia Tech. And so I've been doing that part-time now, but I know that this in itself will not be sufficient in order for me to make the switch. And so I wanted to get some input on what would make sense. One of the options that I thought about was to switch into software engineer within my current company at Discover, either next year or the following year. I think that would be a little easier than if I were to switch into a software engineer or a machine learning engineer role at a different company down the road. But I think the part that I am having a little hard to justify is the opportunity cost. Because I'm currently a senior data scientist, if I were to switch my role into a software engineer or junior software engineer role within Discover, I would assume that I would need to take a pay cut. Whereas I think if I were to apply as a software engineer or machine learning engineer at other companies, I think there could be opportunities where I could make similar compensation as what I'm currently making as a senior data scientist at Discover. So I wanted to get some input on what steps I should take and what would make the most sense in my current position. Thank you.
Okay, so this was the first story. I think he's having some thoughts about like what will be the best step to take. I think changing a profession or like a position is always challenging because of you don't know what to expect, and because of pay cuts or salaries and everything. What you guys have a thoughts on this? What would you do? So
it sounds like, maybe just to clarify the question, but he wants to switch from data science to software engineering to kind of round out his skills, but he wants to do it within the company, right? So he's deciding whether to stay within the company or go outside.
No, I thought he wanted to become a machine learning engineer, so that's what he was considering. Yeah, whether to switch career within the company as a software engineer or jump into the different industry.
right.
Do you guys think he wants to become a machine learning engineer because he wants to do more programming, or do you think it's mostly he thinks it's a better career path?
Oh, that I'm not really sure of. Like I didn't ask for the story. But what if he wants to learn it because of his passion? Do you think he should switch within the company or?
Maybe I could start off, and then I'm curious to know what other people think. Like there's a couple things that I think are important, and one of them is that if you kind of switch your job around, you want to always think about, like, is this something I can do well at, or is this something that I really won't do well at? So like if you were to switch your position and work as a software engineer, you'd be working, depending on your company, you might be working with a bunch of people who have computer science backgrounds, right? And if you don't have a lot of the background with programming in multiple languages and writing trees and managing memory and complexity, and you can make the change so you can learn it, but if you're not going to be successful in that role, it might not be a good idea. And instead, you could try to do something a little bit different. For example, in a big company, they usually have very fixed roles. If you move to a startup where they don't have as many people, you might have the opportunity to do a little bit of everything, so you can start building out that background. But if you do have a background and you do think that you can build that knowledge, I think it's valuable to learn how to be a traditional software developer. So for example, if you were to look at my bookshelf, maybe not that one, but below, there's books on software architecture, right? Because I have to guide a team of software architects to build a software-oriented architecture, microservices architecture, right? And then my head's spinning because I'm trying to learn this stuff and pick it up. Fortunately, I have some background here, but sometimes I think, well, if I would have had the time to work in a standard development process, work as an engineer, be able to do architectural decision records, work agile and sprint, that might have been a good experience. So I think if you're confident that this is something you can do and do well, I would say do it. It's much easier when you're in your 20s to make that kind of a jump, whereas it's very, very hard when you're very senior to make that jump, right? Because the pay cut's going to be much bigger when you're much higher up, whereas moving from a senior data scientist to a regular software engineer, it's probably going to be a bit of a cut, but not huge.
Yeah, I might just add on to that. I think as a software engineer, there are a lot of expectations. I would say, not from direct experience, but friends who've interviewed for CS positions and they didn't get a formal CS degree. If you're applying for CS degree, they expect you to know CS algorithms and data structures and things that you would never have to implement yourself, like traversing a binary tree or a heap list or whatever it is. But if you're applying for that job, they don't care that you're electrical engineering. They're not going to say, oh, that's okay. So I guess, from that perspective, I agree that, they're going to expect you to know that stuff. One of my colleagues that left our group, he had a PhD in biomedical engineering and he was applying for Google. And I think sometimes when you have a PhD, you can kind of present your research and you don't have to go through a technical interview, but for him, he had to go through it. And he asked, I have a PhD, do I need to go through this coding interview? And they're like, well, you're going to be managing computer scientists and programmers, so you yourself have to know. So he picked up, I think it was some coding, it was a coding prep book, and he went through the whole thing, and he ultimately didn't make it, but he went on to somewhere else that was pretty good. But yeah, I think definitely they expect you to know that area pretty well.
Easy. How about as a consultant perspective, do you think it's valid to learn new areas as much as you can before becoming a consultant? Like, let's say if he wants to become a consultant later in the future, because we don't know if he wants.
I mean, you can always kind of rely on your expertise first before expanding. So I think there's no rush in that sense. But kind of tagging on what John said about the early 20s, I really agree with that point where that's kind of when you want to take risks or try something new. Regarding just being an expert in one area, that could get you started for consulting, which is kind of my case. But yeah, I think earlier the better.
Yeah, I think one important thing is think about what you really want to do. As a current for the machine learning engineer, does he want to become a machine learning engineer because he wants to productize his machine learning model and make an impact for the company, or does he just continue to want to build a model and then it's you have to think about what you really want to do. And then also machine learning engineer is such a new position. It's a pretty new position, so I don't think many company has such an opening called machine learning engineer right now. But if you really want to make an impact and then productize your model, then maybe I think consider looking for other opportunity, which whoever the company has opportunity for that would be wonderful. And then I think, as other people mentioned, I think if you're in early 20s, I think you can you can always take a risk and then go for the challenges too.
I think those are really good advices or tips. Yeah. Here's the next story.
Hi, I'm a data analyst at an insurtech startup located in Ann Arbor. While I love the energy and high motivation that exists within the company, as the nature of startup companies go, we really struggle to put out fire most of the days and struggle to make deliverables on time for our clients. To me, the ever so increasing demand for our product and services, my company has eventually put me as a trainer for an offshore team, which requires me to communicate over video conference calls for about 9 or even 10 hours a day. So as a trainer, other than using the performance data to keep track of my training groups, I don't really get to do much data analysis, which was something I really wanted to get my hands on when I graduated school last year. and got hired as a data analyst. With only a little more than a year of out-of-school job with minimal data-related experience, I feel like I've hit a wall now because I am underexperienced and underqualified for any jobs that are not entry or junior level analyst positions. Also, the current pandemic situation makes it hard to even seek for another entry-level job. Although I've been brushing up on my skills such as Python or SQL or even Tableau with online platforms like DataCamp, I feel like it's a limited environment to really improve my skill sets because they don't really showcase what I can do in a business setting. So I would really like to get some advice on how I can improve my competency as a data analyst and what I can focus on in the future to move forward in my career. Thank you so much.
So that was the second story. Sounds like everyone is really having a hard time due to pandemic, but working from home is really hard. And, a lot of meetings.
I physically went back to work in July, so I'm like taking the public transit, wearing a nice mask. Oh, Izzy sent me a mask when I had no mask. Thank you, lifesaver. Yeah, but I've been physically going back, but I think we might transition to work at home in the next coming month or two.
I started remote at Discover, so I've been working remotely for 4 months, and then I think Discover allow employee to work from home until next year. So I think that will be continuing.
I work from home, so it's been good. I lost weight. I'm in really good shape. I eat well. I've switched to being mostly vegetarian, so it's been like really healthy. I used to just eat airport steaks every day.
I went the opposite direction. I ate popcorn, ice cream. Now I at least get to walk to work and expend some calories.
How about you, Easy? How's your working situation like?
I'm like half-half. Yeah. I can spend a couple days a week working from home, or to the office to have some. But I'd say half-half.
Half and half. Okay. Do you guys like working from home, or would you rather go back to work and like physically?
I don't know. I forgot what it's like to see people in person.
I mean, you travel a lot when you're working, right? I mean, you're still working, but like working in person. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, nice to travel a lot. But one of the funny things about being a consultant is you covet all your airline status and your hotel status, but it's all going to go away. So hey, maybe it's the end of the traveling lifestyle for me. It's one of the downsides of consulting is you forget what it's like to have hobbies and friends sometimes. So it's kind of nice. But yeah, going back to I guess the comment. One of the things that's a challenge is that if you work, especially when you're young, you need a job and a boss that supports your growth. I think it doesn't have to be in data analytics, but I mean, if they're not growing, then it's sort of you're not getting one of the benefits of working at a company. So my suggestion would be, they should just have to have a realistic discussion with their boss and just kind of have to realistically think this through and say, is this the best I can do given that we're in, the big pandemic and it's going to be like this for another 6 months, or maybe I could talk to my boss and say, look, I'm doing this role because the company needs it, but I do need growth opportunities. I think that's a fair discussion to have.
So she should talk to her manager about it for her growth opportunity.
I think it depends on the size of the company. I feel like I worked in a small company before, and there's no really way to go up because you're kind of like in a role that you're hired for. And maybe big companies, it depends on the culture whether they want you to be in that role or not. But sometimes it's kind of hard when it's such a kind of small company, flat company. So sometimes I feel like it's easier for you to, climb in a position by going to another company. But I realize that the difficulty is this person is trying to look for other positions. I guess the only other thing is, like, I usually would rather give advice that I've done myself, but I guess it seems like a lot of people are working on projects and putting on GitHub. And so if you're able to do some sort of project like a Kaggle contest and win or something like that, or put some sort of project on GitHub, it seems like that's something that people might look for. I don't know, maybe whoever's been doing recruiting can speak to that, whether that is helpful or not. But that's the only other thing I can think of aside from taking courses. I realize that taking courses is limited. I've kind of done it, but I get the abstract knowledge, but I don't get the real practical experience of it. Like having taken like the Coursera stuff, you really need the practical to really give you the skill sets.
I think depending on the size of company, you may have to wear different hats too. I think that's a really good point.
I think I want to add that because of the pandemic, there are so many learning opportunities because some of the conferences, they're virtually free online, and then those are opportunity for networking as well. And then you could get to meet any other mentors who could guide her, or also mentoring and coaching for those kind of situation or career journey. And then also continue to learn and then maybe practice, and then also look for the opportunity as always.
That's all we have for questions and stories today. If there's anything that you guys want to say in, I don't know, 1 or 2 sentences for just wrapping up, just feel free to chime in. I really appreciate for your time. I think it was really helpful. Personally, I learned so much about data science and even consulting because I'm in a totally different field, and I realized that it's really close to our area as well. It's just everywhere, sounds like. And also the experiences that you guys already have is super helpful as a young professional. But yeah, please give us one or 2 more sentences that you guys want to chime in. That'll be great, and then we can close up.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough that KSEA is a great place to meet people, and personally, I've been friends with John and Ben and working with them for over 10 years. And I have so many specific stories of how they helped me. Ben wrote me a lot of rec letters, taught me a lot of things while we're organizing. When I was applying for consultant jobs or other jobs or career concerns, John was always there and even provided a lot of interview practice material, willing to meet up with me and practice those with me. So yeah, really, kind of doing a plug for Ignite. That's a great place to meet KSEA people. I know this year is going to be a little bit different, but nonetheless, I think it's a good platform for us to connect. And later on, when we get to meet in person, we can also do that. But yeah, whoever's listening, please go apply.
Thank you.
Sure. If we're kind of talking about KSEA, as Amy mentioned, if you want to kind of get an introduction to data science at UKC, there's going to be a data science workshop just on the basics. You don't need programming background, and attend UKC for that. Otherwise, I would just say just follow articles on machine learning and AI. There's a lot of development, and so just on my newsfeed, I Google search a few articles, and now it just pops up on my cell phone newsfeed, and it's just nice to know what the latest technology is. And so I think it just kind of helps, even if you don't delve into the deep technicals. At least you're aware of what direction it's going into.
And the UKC happens when?
December, the week of leading up to December 17th.
Okay, and anyone can join the workshop who participate in UKC?
That's right. As long as anyone can join. If you're a UKC member, UKC is free.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think I personally appreciate for inviting us. It's such an honor to be here with such a wonderful professionals and doctors, and then also to share some stories that Dr. Ben and I and other great organizers started this data science workshop 3 years ago, and we're continuously helping out. And then this year, don't miss it. So we'll be happy to help out and then also coach you. And if you need any mentorship, please reach out to me too.
Thank you very much. John?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the panel, and this I think is really well organized, so thank you. And just to support what everybody else is saying, I see that people who are part of networks and learn together learn so much more than people who try to learn on their own. You learn, the way I learn is I learn from the people on my team. I learn by listening to conferences. I learn by just trying to be a part of as many conversations as possible. So one of the recommendations is don't try to learn data science on your own. Try to be part of a community, try to engage, try to learn as part of a network. And it's great that Ben and Amy are providing these opportunities to do so. So definitely take advantage of it.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks again, guys. That was the first episode of KSEA Visual Radio. I'll be back soon.